Good evening and welcome to the regular board meeting of the St. Peter School Board. We are here in the Governor's Room at the St. Peter Community Center, 6:30 p.m. on Monday, March 20th, 2023. First thing we need to do is call the meeting to order. The meeting is called to order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Perfect.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Reminder quickly that if you would like to speak at the meeting, we have an opportunity to do so. Get your name on one of the cards in the back and get them to Sarah, and we will have a little time in the agenda for that. Next up, consideration and adoption of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda has been adopted. Sarah, do we have any requests to speak?
I do not.
We do not have any requests to speak. All right. Next up is approval of the consent agenda items. The full consent agenda is included in the board book packet and in the packet in front of you. So we need to approve that.
Chair Potts, before I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, I would just like to acknowledge the 33 years in our district of retiring teacher Carrie Borchard, South Elementary. Thank her for her decades of service to the St. Peter School District, as well as early childhood and targeted services program assistant Gina Evenson. She's worked in the district for 22 years.
Wow.
Just really appreciate her time and dedication to the district.
Awesome.
With that, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Next up, the best part of the night, student spotlights. Mr. Graff, I think.
Thank you. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing two of SPMS's best and brightest. We have Maya Knudsen, 6th grader, and Charlotte Hagan, 8th grader. Both participated in this year's musical, which was Lion King Jr., and they were recommended by their theater director as great spotlights for this evening. So I've got 5 questions for them, just an opportunity for you guys to get to know them and a little bit about the trade. So should we just go this way?
Sure.
Okay. So, first one's easy. What was your role in the musical?
My role was Rafiki.
So, describe Rafiki in the movie. Which one's Rafiki?
Rafiki is the monkey, the one that's just crazy.
And how about you, Maya? What was your
I
role?
was in crew, so I was moving the set pieces around and moving the sets.
Nice. So, 2 different perspectives of the overall theater production. So, overall, how was your experience?
My experience was good. I say that this year it really surprised me to see that 5th through 8th graders were all hanging out like we knew each other from day one, even though we just met that day. So.
I really enjoyed it. I haven't been in theater before, so it was really fun and I want to do it again.
Cool. So, I have almost 0 theater experience, and when I watch it, it looks incredibly complex and hard. So I'm curious, what is the most challenging part of either being on the cast or the crew in a musical?
For me, the most challenging part this year specifically was trying to memorize my lines that were a different language.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty challenging.
Yeah.
For me, it was like being able to know like the songs and when scenes ended so that we could move set pieces on.
Sure. So both kind of with this memorization piece. So Charlotte and Maya, what did you guys do to overcome that challenge?
I practiced every night, and I asked Miss Schilling if I was getting the pronunciation right.
I like got my own script and wrote in notes for like when things moved on and off.
Cool. Kind of the big question. Do you think that your participation in the musical has made you better students or people?
Yes.
If so, how?
It's always,
I think that it made me a better person because it made me fit into this role that I wasn't expecting to. And because Rafiki's so crazy, it kind of made me realize that I had this crazy side that I didn't know I had.
I like met a bunch of more people. Like I used to be kind of shy, then I met more people, and I was friendly.
Awesome. That's one of my favorite parts is you get to see kids in school, and we get to see like this much of kids throughout the day. And then you see them on that stage, and some of them are completely different people. And it's just really fun to see that growth and to see the other side. This one wasn't on the list I sent you guys. But the question is, will you do it again? So Charlotte, you got the big stage next year. Will you do it again?
Absolutely.
Awesome. How about you, Maya?
Yeah, I would do it again.
Cool. Would you guys have any questions for our spotlights?
you kind of just answered my question, but I just watched the Oscars. So I'm thinking about the future with the Oscars
No
or like the
pressure.
Tony Awards. No pressure. But do you see a future? Like, do you think you want to keep doing this all the way through high school, maybe beyond?
I think that I want to do it through high school, but I don't think I'm going to do it after high school. I'll probably stick to a different career after
That's
that.
kind of what I say too.
Yeah.
What would those be, do you think, at this point? Not this isn't legally binding or anything. We're just looking for ideas.
Yeah.
So,
At the moment, I want to be a medical physician.
I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah, that's fair.
You got a long time to decide.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went to see the show. Rafiki, you were amazing. Your voice and the language just came out so smoothly. I was really impressed that you took on that really big role. And I know you were recognized that night too by the directors as having a special place on that stage. And Maya, I was so impressed with that. It's a complex set. There were several different scenes, and they were coming on and going off so smoothly, you'd think that you were doing it for a really long time. So I was really impressed with the show. Can't wait to see what you both do in the future.
Thank you.
And then one last thing, would you guys be willing to introduce who you brought with you?
I brought with my parents. The one in the blue shirt is my mom. Her name's Tiffany, and the one in all black is my dad. His name's Chris.
Nice.
I brought my mom and my dad and my grandma. My dad's Brian, my mom's Kate, and my grandma is Judy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we will now move on to, do we, Mrs. Engeldinger, student council update?
No.
Nope, okay. Okay. Next up is action items. For- Yeah, I'll move a little. So Superintendent Gronseth is turning on the overhead projector. The first action item is to consider the fiscal year '24 budget adjustments. We've had an opportunity to discuss this in a few settings, including the study session last week. But Superintendent Gronseth is going to give an overview before we take action on the adjustments.
And Mr. Graff will be helping me out with the middle school portion once he gets back in, but we'll start working through this. We've had at least a few months of conversations. The admin team working with SBEA, the school board meeting, or school board committees, and also the school board study session. And I just wanted to start with talking about why we have a deficit in the first place. In fact, the media called today and they were asking this same question. And there are three main reasons for that deficit. One is a lower enrollment. We had an enrollment study done here for the district, and we saw that there are just fewer students in the area. There are fewer students across the state. So there are many districts that are seeing reductions because of lower enrollment. The second piece is COVID funding. We've had increased funding from both the state and federal levels for the past 3.5 years, and those funds have been expended. And over that period, we added needed services, added support, and we need to decrease the budget in reflection of that funding not being available anymore. The third and probably most important is inflation, and that inflation over time. Not only have we seen very high rates this past year, but we've seen our funding not keep pace with inflation for an extended period of time. And that affects both the general fund, but it also has a special effect with special education. Because special education has been underfunded by the state and federal government, we have been using dollars from the general fund, just like every other district probably in the country. And we're hearing a lot of conversations about the cross-subsidy at the legislation this year. But that underfunding over time has had a big effect on our budget. So overall, we have a deficit of about $3 million. But the results of the legislative session will help us out with that. So we've built into the budget assumptions based on the governor's proposed budget, which was a 4% and a 2% on the base formula and a 50% on that cross subsidy. That takes that $3 million deficit down to about $1.5 million. We know that there will be other pieces in legislation. They may have certain uses for those dollars, but there also may be more mandates. And whether there's an appropriation for those mandates will affect our budget in the end too. So it's all a moving piece, as is the entire budget as we go along. I've had a few questions about the reserve fund. Our goal as a school district is to have about 60 days worth of funding in reserve to be able to operate the district. In legislation, I was reading today on one of the bills that is proposed that they were talking about a mandatory 8 to 10%. We're right in that range with our 60 days. So could we use those dollars? In effect, yes, but we could use them once and then our reserve is gone and we still have to make the reductions in the future. So it's really, as they say, kicking the can down the road, but also making that problem worse because that deficit compounds the second year. So our recommendation would be that we stick to our district policy of having that goal of 60 days worth of reserve and not use the reserve to cover the deficit one time. So, as I said, we've had a few months of conversations around the budget, both in making projections for our revenues and our expenditures, but also the administrative team working together to review all areas of our budget. We did an enrollment study, as I mentioned, to make sure that we are projecting our number of students and therefore our revenues correctly. And then we have had conversations with the St. Peter Education Association and others in the district. And as I said, we've had committee meetings with the school board before. Will there be staff reductions? Unfortunately, yes. As I've said before, our budget is about 80% people. We are a people-oriented organization. And so there's about 20% of our budget that we spend on things like power and gas and supplies and food. And there's not a lot of changes we can make with that 20%. We have found some efficiencies and we'll apply those and we'll talk about those in a bit, but staff reductions are unavoidable in this situation. Just a reminder that the recommendations that we're making are estimates. And upon approval, we'll start to implement those. And the farther we get down the road, the better handle we'll have on the budget and the actual savings made with those reductions. So our enrollment numbers, we'll continue to watch those. Kindergarten is the most obvious one that we keep a close eye on, because of all the grade levels, kindergarten is the one that we have to watch the closest, because we're never quite sure how many students are going to be coming. We know that there were 101 students who came to kindergarten registration night. So far, 82 have signed up. That's on track with where we were in 2018, 2019, but we'll continue to watch those numbers. We won't have a really better idea until the summer months of exactly what those kindergarten numbers will be. Also, registration. We just finished registration at the high school level, so we're getting those class requests, and sometimes we have to make staff adjustments based on where those requests are. Also, we still may receive some retirements yet this spring, or some resignations, and those affect those adjustments as well, and has an effect on the actual dollar amounts of those savings. As I said, the budget is continually adjusting. We say it's a living document. It changes throughout the year as needs arise, revenues and expenditures adjust, and that is why when we do our audit, it's not complete until almost 6 months after the year is over, and that's just the nature of education finance. So I'm going to walk through our recommended adjustments. The first category is district office and district-wide. There's an elimination of several positions for $340,000. Transportation, at the beginning of COVID, we had a need to have 2 tiers of transportation so that we wouldn't have so many kids on each bus, so that they could distance. And that is about $105,000 to go back to 1 tier of transportation. This will affect our daily schedules, because right now the elementary students start earlier than the middle and high school, and now they'll all be on the same bus. So there will be a little time in between, but not as much as there is now. In technology, we're going to make some changes in software. There happen to be some savings with those changes that we're making. And then in maintenance, we're talking about restructuring some positions. We've had several part-time positions available this year that have not been filled because there just haven't been applicants for those positions. So we're looking at doing things a little differently and finding some savings. Any questions on that page? The next section is really focused on our instructional staff and support staff. Looking at South Elementary, we have fewer students at our elementary levels, and with fewer students, it means we have fewer sections. And so we'll be reducing 1 section of first grade, and then we have a retirement at South that we won't be replacing. North Elementary, it's the same thing. We are seeing smaller number of students, and so we have a need for fewer sections, so we're reducing 1 section of third grade. And then we have a 0.5 math interventionist that was added with COVID dollars in response to recovering from the pandemic, and we no longer have the funding for that position. At the middle school, we see the biggest change. That is in response to lower numbers. And as I said, we have lower numbers at South and North. So for the future years, we will continue to have smaller classes coming into the middle school. And so we want to make changes that will address that in the long term, and not make a change and then in another year have to make another change and another change. And so in just a moment, I'll have Mr. Graff come up and he'll give us more details about what that programmatic change at the middle school looks like. It is a net reduction of 8.33 teachers. I say net because in the change of sections, we have to add in some areas and take away in others. At the high school, our plan is to make a reduction of 2 FTEs. And then, not a reduction, but an increase in revenues, is to look at our activities fees and any opportunities we have to get grants or donations or additional funding for early childhood. In looking at area school districts all around us, our activity fees are significantly below in some cases and just below in others. And so we want to make some changes there. Instead of making cuts or reductions to our activities, see if we can raise the revenues and keep the same programs that we have in place, because we know that those are very important to our students and to the community. Just a reminder that seniority rules apply to these positions. So although an employee's position may be eliminated, they may have rights to retain a position over someone else in the bargaining unit or in that licensure area. So we'll be working with SBEA to see how that seniority plays out in the reductions that we're making. So total estimated adjustments, when we add it all up, we have reductions proposed at $1,567,500, an increase in revenues of $10,000, which makes the total adjustments $1,577,500. Now, I want to remind you that these are estimates. So as we implement these, we may find that there's more or less. And as legislative actions take place, we'll know the outcome of those. Well, session is scheduled to end May 22nd. And so we may not know that until June, when MDE works through all of the details of what that means for each district in the state. So this will be a continuing conversation. We'll continue to adjust, watch enrollments, and as we figure out exactly what these reductions add up to make sure that we have a balanced budget for FY24. Mr. Graff, want to come up and walk us through some of the details of the middle school changes?
Yeah, so as Mr. Gronstedt mentioned, some of the biggest cuts will happen at the middle school, and it's really because of two reasons. The first reason is we're seeing cohorts move into the middle school, which suggests that we should make reductions in section sizes. And number two,
Is the mic on?
I think so, the red light's on.
Okay. I was having trouble hearing you, so I didn't know. Actually, it's not speakers.
I was gonna say the mic's not.
Yeah, they're not
affecting
speakers.
anything,
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So reducing sections and the elimination of the block schedule is really where those reductions come into play. So when the board asks us to make reduction proposals, what I thought about from the middle school standpoint was really, what is a middle school? And a middle school to me is teams. That's our current house system, an advisory program, core classes, and exploratory classes. We currently do that with a 6-section block, but as mentioned, that is no longer sustainable with the numbers that we have. So the proposal to reduce a section at the middle school level makes it so that that block no longer is functional. It doesn't work with 5 sections. So we need to come up with a new schedule, and the proposed schedule is a 6-period plus day. You can see it at the bottom of this slide. In a 6-period plus day, our instructional periods would be around 53 minutes with that 45-minute Saints time or advisory period attached to the end. You can, if you can go back. Sorry about that. You'll see that with any schedule there are pros and cons. One of the changes with a 6-period day, you can see it highlighted in red on the schedule up above, our current block schedule. You see that we have room for an elective period at the middle school with our current schedule. If we move, or when we move to a 6-period day, we no longer have room in that schedule for that elective period. So one of the changes would be the elimination of that elective period at the middle school. And this last slide just is a recap of the reductions, where those numbers, where that 8.33 comes from at the middle school level. It's that reduction of 1 section per grade level and the elimination of some of those inefficiencies that come with staffing at the block.
Thank you. so that wraps up our recommendations for adjustments. If you were to take action tonight, we would begin working through the details and implementing those. And in April, we would come to you with the formal personnel actions that follow.
I have a question. When you said the first grade section was getting reduced, is that first grade section reduced, is that the retirement, or is that in addition to the retirement?
That is the retirement.
Okay, that's what I thought, but then how you said it, I was just confused for a minute. I wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly.
In that case, there just happens to be alignment
Yeah.
that we had a retirement in the grade that we were reducing. That doesn't mean, however, that changes in other buildings might not.
Yeah.
If someone has seniority over a position in South, then they would move to South, and the least senior person would be reduced.
And then the other thing I wanted to say for the maybe 2 or 3 people that are watching online, when you say SPEA, that is the teachers,
St. Peter Education Association, it is the teachers union.
sound like some like secret society, so. I
It
wanted
could
to-
be, I don't know.
And you have been working closely with them, as closely as you can, given the fact that we do have to do this?
Yeah, these are always really hard decisions, and making reductions is probably one of the most difficult things that we do as administrators. But we also have that fiduciary responsibility to stay within our means. And so we know that there are difficult conversations ahead. We know that it's difficult for people to lose a position that they love in a school district that they enjoy working for, and it's just as hard for us to see them go. But at the same time, we need to. And so it really has been good to work with the teachers union closely, working through the seniority list and the implications of changes, and coming up with some other ideas as well.
I would add too, I think it's maybe a little trite to reiterate that these are really difficult, really painful conversations to be having. But I think, I'm grateful to Superintendent Gronseth, administrative leadership team, SPEA, about having conversations that are keeping the student experience and the classroom experience at the middle of this conversation whenever possible. And so I just wanted to add that it's not easy for anyone. And I appreciate all the work that many people have put in to have the right tough conversations. Any other questions?
I don't really have a question. I'll reiterate the fact that, as a board member, it's our duty to make sure that fiscal responsibility is at the forefront of what we do. So yes, they're hard decisions, and yes, I appreciate the relationship that administration has with SPEA and open conversations and open dialogue, and school finance is not easy. Tim Regner, trying to figure out numbers. It's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but it's the best shot that you can take. I've been asked an awful lot, and I'm sure other people around this board have been asked also about, what about this, or what about that, or why this, or why that, and, but it's budgets, it's money in, money out, and one-time money, it's easy and it's hard to, but yet it's hard to explain what one-time money is, and yeah, I had to explain it to someone close to me, that, that it's not money that you count on. It's, you won some money on a scratch off. You're not gonna do that every year, so you can't count that. So it's hard decisions. I appreciate what everybody has done. This table, administration table, SPEA, and all the communication that's occurred during it.
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions, comments?
I have a question concerning the finality of this. Given the fact that the legislature is still meeting, and you've taken the governor's proposal as your baseline, and that makes sense. That's the starting point. But I know that there are some proposals, both good and bad, that are going through the legislative process now. Governor Walz asked for 4 and 2. There is a bill that is in each house that's 5 and 5. He said 50% of the cross subsidy. I think there's one bill at least that is 100%. For those of you that don't know, I was at the Capitol today as part of MSBA's Day at the Capitol and got in on some scuttlebutt here and there. They had a panel, a Republican and Democrat from the House, Republican and Democrat from the Senate, that were on the Ed Finance Committees, and the same set up for the Ed Policy Committees. And those 8 individuals were all very positive and spoke, as politicians may do, to the audience. But there was reason for hope that things may be better than we anticipate. But on the other hand, which we tried to, when we went out and did some individual meetings, tell members of the legislature there are proposals there that have some very unintended consequences and are unfunded mandates. And I happened to run into the people from Mankato, and they had a board member there who was telling their representatives that if you were to give us, what you're proposing, that would be something like $6.8 million more. But if we went through every bill that's out there and did the additional finance that it required, it would be 8 point some additional $1 billion. So even with all this wonderful aid, we're still $2 more million in the hole. So that's what makes this so difficult, is we have to have this budget done because 80% is personnel, and then you have contract stipulations and legal stipulations about when you can relieve individuals. So you have to make those decisions in the dark. There's always hope that the legislature comes through. We don't need to cut as much as we did, and we could add people back. But the problem is, as soon as someone is identified and we pass action on it, they're in the job market. And we stand a good chance of losing some very good people because the legislature can't make a budget before we have to make a budget. So that's where all the difficulty comes.
Chair Potts.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this conversation just goes back to school finance is really confusing. And, if I'm a member of the public, young parent, what the state legislature does is incredibly important to us. But if we have fewer kids next year than we had this year or the year before or 5 years before that, we're going to be making cuts because none of these ideas that the unified legislature have is changing the way schools are funded, and that's per pupil. And if we have less kids, we're going to be making cuts because we'll have less money going forward. And I've been on the school board for 15 years, and I came in with cuts, and it looks like that's the way that my time on this board will end. But we had a really good run of 2.5% growth. And that allowed this district to do a lot of things, to build a reservoir that we didn't have prior to that, so that we can bridge gaps when we need to. But again, if we're not adding kids to this district, if parents can't come in and find housing and daycare and jobs, that's not great long term. And I don't think it's all doom and gloom. We have a demographic study, but that demographic study also doesn't say this is going to turn around and we're going to go back to 3% growth for the next 20 years either. So unfortunately, it's a situation that our community and many of the communities around us are in.
Thank you, Ben. Any other comments or a?
Chair Potts, I make a motion that we consider the fiscal year 24 budget adjustments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to consider, or to approve the fiscal year 24 budget adjustments. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the fiscal 24 budget adjustments, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Fiscal year 24 budget adjustments have been approved. Thank you. We need Maya back to do the set takedown in between.
Yeah.
All right, the only other action item, number 2, is to consider approval of the second reading of revisions to the policy manual. Superintendent Grunstadt.
Yes, these came before you last month. Just to remind you, it was a change in the 9th grade communications class requirement, and then adjusting the credits for learning in 620 to take that credit out and to add it as an elective credit. And then there was the PE and communications change included in those.
I've heard nothing.
Any feedback to
Any
policy
feedback
committee
at all?
members? Anyone
I've
else?
heard nothing.
Okay.
I think we had some good discussion about it last month.
Mhm.
Again, not fun to take away from anybody's passion, because that's what teachers are. They're passionate about what they do, so. But I do think they're good decisions.
Looking at the 9th grade elective choices, they have, yeah, they were really interested in some diverse areas.
So do I remember correctly, are the requirements for physical education unchanged, but it's just not a required course?
Say that again. Yeah,
The number of credits you have to have in PhyEd is the same, but it's just not a required course. You can replace it with electives?
no, it's actually reduced by 0.5.
Okay.
It was 1 credit. The state requires half a credit.
I would be interested to see, I'm guessing she has just like big numbers of what some of those 9th graders were interested in for electives. I would be kind of curious to see what that is, or how that all pans out, I guess. I know
Yeah.
my 9th grader was all over the place, but he kind of is in general anyway, but, you know, there's a lot of choices there, so.
Yeah, there were interests in a few different areas. some of which we don't have capacity for, so
Oh,
that kind of took us by surprise.
they did write-ins or what?
Well, you know, some of our most popular courses are in the CTE areas, and so like culinary is already bursting at the seams,
Ah, I got
and
it.
that's kind of where a lot of them migrated. Business courses were another one that there were a lot in. I just kind of browsed it today, so I don't have all those areas, but it was interesting to see where the ninth graders had their interests.
Well, and I do look forward to expanding that beyond ninth grade and allowing kids to be able to take the required things they need to take, but be able to have the options to try other things.
Yeah. Hopefully we won't end up with new requirements after this legislative
No, we're
session.
adding them back.
That was talked about.
Yeah.
I move that we recommend the second reading of these two policies, that we accept them.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, I think I'm gonna have to vote no, just because I don't like reducing by it. I think that's an important aspect.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the second reading and the revisions to the policy manual signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Motion passes. Second reading of the revisions to the policy manual have been approved as outlined in the packet. Next up, we have informational items. The first is the Native American Advisory Committee update. Mr. Graff.
Before Mr. Graff starts, I'll just remind everyone that this is an annual action that the Native American Parent Advisory Council takes. And it is a vote of concurrence or non-concurrence. And I'll let Mr. Graff share the exciting news.
Yeah, so just a quick recap, as you already know, state statute requires any district with 10 or more Native American students to have a Native American Parent Advisory Committee. We've met that threshold for at least the last 7 or 8 years. Part of that process with that committee is to submit annual compliance paperwork to the state, and that paperwork requires what we call a vote of concurrence or non-concurrence. So essentially what the team is voting on is, does the district, A, meet the state standard by statute by having a team, and B, is the district meeting the needs of the Native American students? And the team voted in concurrence this year, and is proud of the work that the team and the district has done, and they're very much looking forward to the continued progress that the district is showing.
Can I ask you a question, which I hope doesn't mess up your thinking? It's not okay. So on the attachment, it says, and I'm always wondering, because I'm always afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing, because I don't keep up on it. So the American Indian Parent Advisory, so the American Indian, but then we also have Native American. So are both of those okay?
Yes, so
Phew.
way back when we started this, me as a brand new administrator, the very first question that I asked the team is like, what's the appropriate terminology? And at that time, the team, the members on that team said they preferred Native American as opposed to American Indian. So St. Peter's team has always called themselves the NAPAC, where the state language is American Indian rather than Native American. So, good catch.
I feel pretty sure. So in St. Peter, I should say Native American, but I'm kidding. Either one would be okay.
Based on the 7 individuals on that team.
Native American is the preferred term of Minnesota Historical Society.
Okay, only got 2 in that direction, so.
Other questions, comments?
So I have the signed paperwork, so I'll submit that to the state tomorrow morning.
Great.
So we'll be in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is a facilities update.
As usual, we had several projects that were planned for this summer, and Sharon has been busy aligning all of the contracts and work to be done, and she's here to share.
I'm here to share. Hey, hello.
Sure.
So, first,
middle school. We're going to replace some more ceiling tile in the hallway, so that the second floor hallway, all the lighting will be upgraded to LED. That's already happened. I finished replacing the ceilings in the middle school hallway, and we're also going to paint that hallway so that it's all one, so it looks more unified and more inviting. The ceiling tile, 3 early childhood classrooms are going to get a ceiling tile and LED lighting upgrade. Those 3 were not done in the past, so we're going to get finished this year is the plan. We're also going to lighting upgrade in the ceilings in the cafeteria serving area. The main the middle school office and the workroom. And the cafeteria is also getting some new equipment installed. So it was per time to just kind of do the ceiling and lights when that was happening at the same time. So that's why that one was chosen, that area. We're going to get a new door. There's in the music room in the middle school. There's it's kind of open to the rest of the area, so it's kind of something we're thinking about for safety. We're going to put a door, a wall on the door, so that if the occupants need to, they can, get themselves secured in a secured space. The high school, a washer and dryer was donated this past year, and it's going to get installed at the high school. It's a washer, dryer, and spinner. We're going to have that installed. The middle school also is going to get a new stage curtain that is going to end the high school. Has some needs for extra power because of the equipment in some of the shops. There's not enough power, it's in the wrong places, so that's going to get upgraded. And we're also going to get some solar panels on the high school and the middle school. And that's probably the most exciting thing that's going on there. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. Well, I should say that's it. There's kind of a lot. There's the tile, the floor tile at North Elementary is from last summer, the stuff that was not installed because of supply chain stuff. Those 6 classrooms are going to get the tile installed. We have the tile, and it's going to get installed this summer. And then there's 3 little floor projects. One of them is the kitchen floor in North Elementary. It needs some repair. Middle school, there's some tile in a couple of the offices at the community center that are going to be replaced, and also South Elementary has some tile in one of the restrooms that's missing and it's going to be replaced. So we're just kind of cleaning those things up, and we are spending a lot more time at the middle school just to kind of get that so that it looks more unified. So if it seems like there's a lot of things at the middle school, that's why. Questions?
I did just want to throw in that, seeing as how we just talked about budget and reductions, that this is a different funding source. This comes from long-term facilities maintenance dollars. So these are for ongoing capital projects and is not money that could be used in the classroom. It has to be focused on our buildings. And that the solar panels, which is a very exciting project, is all funded by a grant. And so that is coming from the state.
I'm just curious with the washer and dryer, where is that going in the high school? Not that, I'm just curious.
The plan, where we're planning on installing it is it's in the gym area. There's an office that is right next to the wrestling.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so we measured, they will fit in there, and it's just a matter of, we have to get the right people in there to do, what they do to install them. But that's where we're going to put those.
That's exciting. I know that was something that was missed by many, or
Yeah.
a few, a lot.
And installing them, it also, right now, run the laundry from the high school to the middle school and back and forth, and sometimes they're waiting for it, it's just different things happen, and sometimes it's not there when they need it. This way, it'll be more convenient for the high school to, football uniforms, all that stuff, and these are industrial washers, so it'll handle anything the high school has.
Our thanks to River of Life Church for donating to us.
We had it in our church for a long time, and I'm like, I think, well, actually, I put them on Facebook, and a teacher was like, hold on a minute.
So will the solar panels give us electricity?
It will.
So that'll help with our utilities?
Yes. And it is, there are significant savings. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but we presented them when we accepted the grant. There are significant savings over the next 20 years. And so we're excited to get those in. They will be the largest arrays in St. Peter. So they will add to the city's power grid significantly.
Then, are any of the projects going to impact the summer programs or something?
They shouldn't. One thing that we know after 15 years of breathing feed, sorry, ET was like, that's my report. Never mind.
Okay. Just stay tuned. All right.
Just a tease.
Sitting on the edge of my seat here.
Well, I kind of set it up that after 15 years, we're no longer eligible, and so we won't be able to post breathing feed. But we may be able to provide some meals to some programs. And I'm sure ET will say it better than I.
I'll elaborate.
Yes.
Do we have to call it red fed now? Or?
All right, any other questions? Sure. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. That is it for informational items. We are now on to reports. Principals and others. Indeed, we can't wait for the update. I started saying it, and you wouldn't believe how fast she caught my eye. Kind of got the mom.
We don't have a lot of these, like, big programs going on, so I feel sometimes I have not put the same thing. So I had new news this week.
So I'm sure you can tell us that.
Yeah, well.
Forget what just happened.
Thank you. Well, it's really exciting, as I reported last time, we have our spring conferences coming up. We're a little bit later than the elementary this year. We'll have those next week, so we'll be meeting with our families and talking about what's next for our kids who are waiting in kindergarten, or maybe they're back with us next year. We're also doing our transition planning for our kids who are waiting in kindergarten, making some visits there for our early child and special education program. And we're taking registrations for fall. So that'll be our online registration system. And then, as Mr. Johnson said, summer food. 14 years, kidding, of the reading feed. And we no longer qualify. So we are sad to report that.
Why do we no longer?
Yeah. So in the past, how sites are determined eligible is the site either needs to be 50% free or reduced, or they need to fall in a boundary that's identified by census data. So in the past, our high school site, which is now our middle school site, qualified for a number of years. And then a couple of years ago, the middle school site dropped off and North picked up. And now North no longer qualifies. So based on that census data right now, those sites don't qualify for those open sites. We have the potential of doing some what's called closed enrolled sites. So if we hold our summer school program and 50% of the students who attend that program qualify for free and reduced, we can feed those kids during the program as long as it's an educational program. So we'll find out more about that. I did email MDE today and asked a little bit of a follow-up now with the free meals for all legislation. And she said that will actually begin July 1st, the free meals for all. So we'll do some checking to see how that might impact some of the programming that we hold for on-site. But we do know at this point it won't be that open site where anyone ages 1 to 18 can come. So I'll provide more updates as we get them. That's exciting news for school food program in the fall, and with that free breakfast and lunch for students. Oh. We are just on the same wave here. So as I said, there may be some options, so we'll keep you abreast of those as they develop.
Greetings from North Elementary, everybody. Early March, a good number of students, I think 35 to 40 students participated in the Young Writers Conference. That was on March 8th. That always goes on at Bethany. So we always, not every school does this, but we do organize a bus, and then one of our teachers chaperones, a good number of parent chaperones. So we definitely always have great representation at that program that's put on and organized by a South Central Service Cooperative. Also, if you're in our classrooms over the last couple months, you can see our teachers kind of finishing up junior achievement. Just a reminder on that. That's all funded by local businesses. All materials are donated. It's to just basically integrate and embed like social studies standards, math standards, and science standards. We get a good number of volunteers from the community that come in and guest teach at the same time. The teachers coordinate that. So it's always great to see all the volunteers coming and going from the building. Students getting a fully integrated kind of learning approach to that, different kind of rollout. It has some huge impact, so we thank the community for funding that. Also want to bring a spotlight to the North Student Spotlight, or our student support team, which includes our social workers and our part-time nurse. We routinely meet weekly and analyze student data. We look at attendance data, we look at discipline referrals, we look at like office visits, and try to compare them from one year to the next to the next. And we have some really good numbers this year. We were looking at some attendance rates. As of this point of the year, we're sitting at 95% attendance out of all the students. That's up over about 2.5% last year at the same time. So that's about two full school days per student increase being at school. So that's phenomenal, as well as like a reduction of about 20% on health office visits, and then also 57% reduction in behavioral referrals as of this time, as of last year. That's huge, and basically that equates to more time in the classroom, more time on task, more time learning. So, like I said, I just wanted to bring some attention to the great work that team is doing. Also, looking forward to the March Super Saints Assembly. Our PBS team just does a phenomenal job, whether it's, last time I was talking about like the Kindness Crew, student anchors on our Saint Center. Looking forward to this round because they're going to do Family Feud. So they have questions that like survey like out of 100 North students, what are the top 8 indoor recess activities you like to do, and they compete against the teachers in the building in front of everybody in the assembly. So looking forward to that rowdy event in June, coming March 31st.
All right, and lots going on at the middle school, as always. As you heard earlier, at the Student Spotlight, we had our musical. The students put on 4 total performances, 2 for their classmates, and then 2 for the public. And it was interesting, I think is the word, to see on Monday, those kids were tired. That was a lot for them. Our 5th and 6th grade math masters team sent 2 teams to Bethany Lutheran College for a competition, and one of those teams got 2nd place, and that was last week. And then the last one, Student Council tries to do a fundraiser every year, and this year they really wanted to raise money for a memorial for Emily Kropp, our EL teacher who passed away unexpectedly earlier in the year. So they chose to do Penny Wars, which is something that we've done in the past. And if you're unfamiliar with Penny Wars, each advisory has like a bucket in their room. A penny is points for, and all other types of money are points against. And then you compete to see who can get the most money. They raised $4,200 through Penny Wars, through essentially loose change. So they will be working to purchase a bench that we hope to put outside of Emily's former classroom, and maybe get a garden around it. And then the leftover money they're going to donate to the high school to Emily's scholarship. So pretty cool stuff going on.
Well, Mr. Doherty, great minds. think alike. I was also going to give a update on some of the work that our team is doing on attendance. Our student support team, dean of students, the nurse, the same people that Darren was talking about, have been working on this as a building behavior goal, along with all of the staff. And we can report from first semester that our building goal for behavior was to improve attendance, to have a 5% decrease in unexcused absences, and as of the end of first semester, we're at 20%. And so just overall, I can ditto that student behavior as a whole is improving, especially over the last year. I also wanted to just, our choir has a send-off concert tonight, and they're heading off to New York City, like middle of the night, actually, right?
2 o'clock.
130 kids and 33 adult chaperones. I think there are like 3 different flights. So they all get there safely. Better them than me, right? And we also had our Spanish kids just this past weekend go to Concordia Language Villages for that weekend. And we also still have a French club that Paulette Topol is running, and so we're sending a handful of French students from that club as well around.
2 p.m. Are they flying out of Milwaukee or? Minneapolis. They'll find out.
They'll talk about tiring. I've chaperoned that trip before, and those kids, they keep them extremely busy, which is very good.
Questions? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Superintendent Graff.
Well, as Mrs. Pratt stated, the legislature and the governor signed into law last Friday that free meals would be starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July 1. One of the things that we had mentioned when we were talking about this before is our concern about that percentage of students who receive free and reduced price lunch being connected to compensatory education funding, title funding, 4 or 5 different other formulas. And this bill actually holds it at the same level for the coming year. So for FY24, we'll have it the same level that we did for FY23, which is good. You're shaking your head, Tim. Did I get that? FY?
This year's 23, this year's really low. Next year will be a high level, and I'm assuming what they're doing is holding it for 25.
Thank you, yes. Because it's a year behind.
Right.
Yeah. See, the whole education funding thing. So the thought is that in the meantime, they are going to be trying out different ways of using those formulas. So they might use Medicare as a measurement and ELL, or there might be other rates that they use in the future to determine those funding rates. And so we'll just have to wait and see. Yes?
Is that a legislative decision or an Department of Education decision on what factors to use?
Well, it was in the bill that they would use the same for the coming year. So I'm not sure if the legislature has to take another action to put a formula in place, or if MPE makes that decision. Tomorrow is the last day of the 3rd quarter, and as a reminder, there's no school for students on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we will see everyone for the first day of 4th quarter, last quarter of the year already, next Monday. And that is all I have this evening.
Around the table, Mr. Lynn.
Just just want to thank everybody for the work that the administration you guys did on coming up with that list. I know that was a lot of meetings and not a very fun thing to talk about, but I appreciated the communication through that, so. That's all I got. And I'm glad I'm not going to New York. Just had to say.
Yeah, I would just encourage you, if you run into our legislators when they're on their break and so forth, or have a spare moment to shoot off an email, encouraging them to vote in favor of 5 and 5. The consensus up there was that it'll be probably somewhere between 5 and 5 in the governor's forum too. But in talking with Representative Brand, and because we met with him and the Mankato people with Representative Frederick, and they both, I think, are in favor of 5 and 5. And just said, keep the pressure up. Of course, Senator Friends wanted to know where they were going to get it from. I wanted to say 1.7 billion or whatever it is.
So those schools that are in the House and Senate with 5 and 5, is the special ed cross subsidy at 50% done still, or what?
That's a separate.
That's a separate thing. Okay. I just thought it would be school funding.
Well, it'll probably be all wrapped up in an omnibus bill when it gets done. But, so, yeah, if you're going 5 and 5, you might as well go 100% cross subsidy.
Yes. Throw it out there.
I think they have about 2,000 bills in process.
More than about 2,500.
2,500 now. It keeps going up every time I hear, but, you know, and all of those have strings. So it's a lot to keep track of.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon.
I have two things. First of all, I want to, with this budget work, it's just really important to thank the SPEA for working with the administration on this, because this is just the hardest thing in the world to do, is to cut staff, teachers. And then secondly, with the Native American Parent Advisory, with the concurrence, that seems like a light little thing, but it makes a big difference. The district benefits from it, the students benefit from it. They bring in resources that are unbelievable, and they're a very, very active group, and I just want, pay attention to when they publicize activities that are coming for they're good for everybody. So thank you to them. That's it.
Thank you. We have a number of upcoming meetings. Business committee is tomorrow at 5 o'clock, district office. Policy committee next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, the district office. HR committee next Thursday at 7:30 a.m. in the district office. Education committee Tuesday the 11th at 1 o'clock in the district office. The business committee Wednesday, April 12th at 4 p.m. in the district office. And then again, we'll be back here for the regular board meeting on Monday, April 17th at 6:30 p.m. in this very room.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.